Pain point we were solving was consistency for the marketing team, consistency for the sales team. We all go with great intentions to adopt a new piece of software or any type of technology. But what we underestimate is the amount of change that it means for the people who actually have to use it in day-to-day work that they have. You first have to identify the problem that you're trying to solve. I think if you go spend 30 minutes browsing on LinkedIn and you just scroll your feed, there's going to be 20 different ideas on how to use AI in your business. And they're not all right for you.
Hi everybody, welcome to the Devico Breakfast Bar. Here we speak with different people involved in the business landscape, share their expertise, delve into the latest tech trends, and explore the ins and outs of IT outsourcing. I'm Oleg Sadikov, and today I'm excited to have Dean Curtis, CEO at Ingage. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss new episodes. Hi Dean, thanks for joining me today.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate the opportunity to talk with you today.
Let's start our podcast with a little blitz. I start a sentence and you continue.
Okay.
My position as the CEO gave me...
My position as a CEO gave me the opportunity to lead in a way that I never knew was possible.
My position as CEO deprived me
of a little bit of sleep every once in a while, and sometimes my patience, but overall it's been positive, so it's hard to answer that one.
My main superpower is...
the ability to make things better.
My main weakness is...
thinking I can do it all myself.
And the last one, when I'm afraid I
talk. I'll talk before I get through too much.
You started your career as a math teacher before transitioning into tech. What made you change your career?
I was a classroom teacher in Baltimore County Public Schools, had the opportunity to teach middle school and high school for 4 years. And during that time, I was actually part of a technology team within a school. So we were a Apple Classroom of Tomorrow's school in Baltimore and got my hands on with a lot of really cool technology and realized that I had some skills in technology and looked at that as an opportunity for me personally to expand beyond the classroom. And also financially, it was more rewarding. So I said, you know what? I love teaching. I was actually pretty good at it in terms of had received some awards early on in my career, but I wanted to see if there was something else that I could do with the skills that I had. So I figured I always had teaching that I could go back to, and I decided that I wanted to take the leap and get into technology. So I entered a program at Oracle for recent college grads, even though I was about 4 years out, to get into the technical sales world.
You have had a rapid rise within Ingage from Chief Revenue Officer, then COO, then CEO in just a few years. Could you tell me a little bit more what fueled that quick professional rise and what leadership skills do you think are the key making to happen?
When you join a startup, you don't really know what you're getting yourself into until you're there. And when I came to the company, we were in a transition period from being primarily a digital agency to running a full-on software business. And through that transition, there was a lot of change in organizationally. So I came in as Chief Revenue Officer. There was already a Chief Operating Officer, but by consolidation of the business and downsizing, it just made sense to consolidate those positions. The COO left, so I moved into that spot. So it was a pretty easy one. And then when we got to a certain point, the current CEO and a very good friend of mine decided to pursue another opportunity. So there was an opportunity for me then to move into that CEO spot. And I'd proven that I had some decent leadership skills and I had some ideas on how we could move the business forward. And we were at a real interesting tipping point, and the board had some faith in me that we could make that move. And from a leadership perspective, it really was about listening to the team and helping the team be their best. So yes, I had to make some hard decisions. We downsized the company pretty significantly, but it was facing those things head on with the help of the team and understanding that everyone had a role to play in those decisions, the leadership side of it. It was being a leader of leaders really helped me to navigate through some of those tough challenges.
Ingage focuses on empowering sales teams with engaging measurable presentations. What pain points in the market were you most eager to solve when you stepped in as the CEO?
Yeah, it's interesting because the history of the company is varied. If you go back to 2008 when the company started to where we are today, it is very different. But at the point where I took over as CEO, we had identified product market fit in a specific vertical in home improvement where we were helping people at the kitchen table to convert deals at a higher pace. And we were doing that through very rich, interactive content. So the pain point we were solving was consistency for the marketing team, consistency for the sales team, so that they knew that what they trained on, because the companies that we help do an intense amount of training of their sales team, that the information that they trained on would be delivered in a way that was predictable in the home. And we provided that platform for them to have the great content and make sure everyone who needed the content had what they needed at that point in time. They weren't going and searching the Box Drive or the Google Drive for the latest version of a presentation. Every time they opened their iPad, they had it. So that was a big pain point that we solved. And then finally on the back end, to understand that if Oleg was going to present in the home, we teach a certain path through the presentation, spending a certain amount of time on different topics to move that customer along the buyer journey. We could tell them if they were doing it or not. And if someone was doing it differently, you could look at that as maybe a big brother moment to say, hey, you should be doing it our way. Or you could say, wait, Oleg does it totally differently and he's converting at a higher rate. Maybe we should think and talk to him about what he's doing differently that we should train the rest of the sales team on. So having that analytics on the back end really proved that you could see how people were interacting with the content and how that was translating into closed business.
How does your typical CEO day look like? I'm mostly interested in understanding how to balance your time between strategy, task management, team management, and staying connected with customer needs.
I think it's not as consistent a day, but it's a pretty consistent week. So day to day, it shifts quite a bit, but I like to think of it as if I could have the perfect week, how would that play out, right? So Mondays are typically strategy and planning days and review. So we have leadership team meeting. I have some creative time in the morning where I'm going through and building out content for the week that I'm either going to post on Instagram or LinkedIn. I'm really thinking about and planning that week out to have the rest of the week be successful. Tuesdays are primarily a content day for me, where I'm really thinking about content for our company, reviewing what the analytics were on the previous week's content. Wednesday and Thursday are a lot of one-on-one meetings, checking in with the teams, making sure that they're enabled and have what they need. And then Fridays are kind of the recap day. So I look at it more along the time frame of a week than just a single day, because while I just laid out this ideal structure of a week that I would want to have, there's a lot of other things sprinkled in where you're dealing with a customer issue, you're getting on the phone with an investor. There's so many little things that filter in throughout what I think is the perfect week that fills the time.
What are some of the most common mistakes companies make when trying to empower their sales teams with new tech?
I think the biggest mistake that people make is underestimating the amount of time that it's going to take to actually implement the change within their environment. So I think we all go with great intentions to adopt a new piece of software or any type of technology. But what we underestimate is the amount of change that it means for the people who actually have to use it in the day-to-day work that they have. I mean, we're going through this ourselves with a piece of software that we've been using for about a year, and we have to do a little bit of a reset on how we are implementing it because there's confusion amongst the team in some of the aspects of how we use it. And we see that a lot with our customers. They have this great vision of implementing new process within their sales team. Well, that's very disruptive. It can be if you don't plan it well. So seeing people not really think through the post-purchase, I built this great content, I need to deploy it to my sales team. What does that mean from a training? What does that mean from a practice perspective to make sure that you implement that change and manage change throughout the organization? I think that's true whether it's our software or any software. People are adopting AI at blistering pace right now, but are they doing it in a way that's methodical and well thought out? I don't think everyone is.
Not always. Some of them struggle adapting.
Yeah.
That will be my next question. Yeah, as I mentioned, I think many companies these days struggle with adapting AI because of data quality issues, lack of internal expertise, availability of a lot of options that, to be honest, might not work well as expected enough. So our expectations are a bit higher than can help with. What advice would you give to leaders trying to integrate AI into their sales processes?
It's like any technology. You first have to identify the problem that you're trying to solve. I think if you go spend 30 minutes browsing on LinkedIn and you just scroll your feed, there's going to be 20 different ideas on how to use AI in your business. And they're not all right for you. So I think like any technology purchase, whether it's AI or a wiki software or presentation software, you have to first identify the problem that you're trying to solve. Many people are probably familiar with the jobs to be done idea or theory. What is the job to be done by that software? Once you define that, you can go find the right solution. But if you go out and just say, hey, I'm going to do some AI research today, and you go out and start searching and you're like, okay, I have ChatGPT, I have Claude, I have Notebook LM, I have Perplexity, complexity? How do they solve the problem uniquely that you need to solve? If you've never identified that problem to solve, you're really starting in the wrong spot. It's not tool first, it's problem first, then tool. And I think it's really important as you're evaluating any technology purchase or implementing any technology in your sales process, in your business in general, you really have to focus on the job to be done. You really have to focus on the problem that you're trying to solve. There are plenty of tools out there. Then whittle down the list. Hey, use AI to help whittle down the list of the tools that help you solve that problem, and then start small. We are implementing AI across the board in our company, and our mandate to the team is not as straightforward as maybe I don't know if there's been a few CEO emails that have floated around in ether these days around mandates of AI use. Our mandate is try, start, do something, use it for a very specific use case, learn it, get better at it, and then expand. But if it's not defined around a job to be done, I just don't think you're going to have success.
Are there any AI trends or tools that you personally find exciting or like game-changing at the moment?
We've been experimenting with a prospecting agent within HubSpot, which is showing a lot of promise to help our sales team in their prospecting. I'll go back to the simple stuff though. How can I teach my team how to prompt to write an incredible follow-up email that doesn't sound needy, that doesn't turn the person off? Like the most simple things of our daily work that can be streamlined. I always talk about AI in the early days for anyone as how can it help you solve the blank page so that you can move forward faster with more efficiency and more quality. So to me, seeing a blank page is usually, I don't want to say terrifying, but I'll use that word to be hyperbolic, that it's terrifying. But if I can just talk to the AI and say, hey, write me an email to Oleg. We just did a podcast, and I start prompting it, and it comes up with a baseline of what I could send to you as a thanks for being on this podcast. A, it saves me a ton of time. B, it's probably going to be written better than I would have, and I can personalize it once it's done. AI doesn't have to do all the work, but at least it gets me off the home plate onto the field so that I can actually get the work done in a more efficient way.
Are there specific regions or countries that you find particularly promising for tech talent?
We are focused primarily in the US. We've had some very good success internationally hiring. We had an outsourced team in Brazil for a while. They were incredible. We have one team member that's out of Argentina. He's also very, very good. We haven't focused on international, but I do, in my experience throughout this company and others, we've had great experience in all areas around the world, Brazil especially in terms of tech talent, South America in particular, but we don't do very much of it. We've brought most of our talent in-house, just been the majority of what we're doing. Where we found the most value was outsourced QA with our old product in Eastern Europe. So that was also very, very helpful.
What are your thoughts on the advantages and disadvantages of outsourcing, especially in the context of your experience outsourcing QA?
You know, what's interesting is I think the more you know what you want to do, the easier it is to outsource because you can give very clear direction to the team that you're working with and get great economies of scale through cost savings and efficiency of those outsourced teams. We found that when we did it early and we weren't 100% clear on our vision for the product, it was much harder to do outsourcing because we couldn't give great instruction. So we would lose lots of time in the communication back and forth with the outsourced team. And I think, just to summarize, if you know what your goals are and what the projects are and they're really specific tasks, it can be a great efficiency. If you don't, it can probably cost you more than just knowing yourself. So you have to know yourself before you can outsource, is my take on it.
How do you resolve a case when, for example, you're the CEO? You might not be well aware of quality assurance processes and best practices. So what I want to say is that you might not be aware of how it should be done right and what do you want eventually to get. And when you speak with experts, they can understand your needs and to build this way to success. So I think it also makes sense to consider now, because you might not be aware of what you want.
That's right. I think what I'm talking more about is the product definition. A lot of times what we would do is we would give tasks out, but we weren't specific enough because we weren't really clear on what it was. I think QA is a great place to start though with outsourcing because the product is the product and it's done. And if you can have someone who's incredible at doing outsourced quality assurance and testing of your solution, as long as you can define what it is the product does and how it's supposed to behave and educate that team, you can get great economies of scale doing outsourced quality assurance and testing for sure.
How do you see the role of IT outsourcing evolving in the context of your industry future?
It's interesting. We were a team that doesn't have an IT department. So one of the things we've tried to do is hire really good technical people so they can self-support. And we use technology that's pretty easy to use. As an ex-Apple person, we're all in on the Apple ecosystem. I do see tremendous value in it because I always want to have our core competency being our software and what we do. And having an IT outsource is something we're actually considering right now because we are getting to the size of a company where it will make sense to have someone who can manage some of those tasks and make sure our infrastructure is, from a security perspective, I think it's huge. If you don't have somebody on your team who understands corporate security, enterprise security, making sure you have great policies and all of your systems are locked down in a great, efficient way, that expertise can be used by an outsource very, very easily. We're in that purgatory period right now of making those decisions once we cross certain thresholds in our business.
As we wrap up our conversation, what advice would you give to companies considering IT outsourcing but concerned about losing control over their technology projects?
I think that fear of loss of control is probably more a fear of the unknown and making assumptions that they're not really comfortable. It's more of a discomfort than a fear, meaning they just don't know what they don't know. So I think being able to have an open dialogue with the outsourcing partner is critical. Being vulnerable to say the things you don't know, not making assumptions about the other partner, and asking the hard questions, especially if you've been burned by someone before, which I think anyone who's watching this who's worked with a consultant probably hired a bad consultant at some point. And that experience can taint the future consultants and outsource people that you might work with. So being careful to not bias your new relationship with the bad breakup that you had before. Be sure to really ask those hard questions and be vulnerable about what the things you don't know. And that will test the expertise of the people that you're going to try to work with to see how they can make you feel comfortable with the decision you're about to make.
Dean, thank you very much for your time. Great, interesting conversation, great career success from the math teacher to the CEO. Thanks for joining me today, and I'm sure this podcast will be interesting for my auditory.
Awesome. Thanks, Oleg. Have a great weekend.
If you enjoy our discussion and want to stay updated on the future episodes, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell. That way you will not miss out on the latest insights and conversations from the Devico Breakfast Bar. See you in the next episode.